Welcome to the Pretty Intense podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button. Today on the show is Dr. John Delony. Here's his new book, Building a Non-Anxious Life. He is a #1 national bestselling author, mental health and wellness expert, host of the Dr. John Delony Show, which you need to check out. He holds 2 PhDs, one in counselor education and supervision, and another in higher education administration. It was really fun to be able to dive into mindfulness and connection and reality being one of them, of like, be honest, accountability, truly be honest about what's happening in your life. And as Jocko would say, extreme ownership, learning how to not necessarily not get rid of anxiety, but how you can craft your world so that anxiety isn't as much of a part of it or isn't a part of it anymore. And realizing, as he says, that anxiety is a smoke signal. It's not the problem, it's just the symptom. Please enjoy this episode. I hope you like it. And please let me know what you think in the comments. And please share what resonated with you. I'd love to know.
Your place feels so like you're at home. It's fantastic.
I am.
Oh, okay. Well done. Well done.
I promise I didn't wear the John Delony uniform today. It just so happens that I put black on, and I knew you always wear black.
I got your text like, hey, let's dress this exactly the same. So that was cool. I'm in.
This will be very cute.
You make me feel loved. Exactly. Very cute.
Well, I think it's good. I feel like I've heard before that the reason behind that is like I've heard that people that wear the same thing all the time, it's like a reduction of decisions to make in a day, something like that. Like it has to do with sort of brain capacity and just making fewer decisions. Is that why you wear all black all the time?
Mine is this like latent fantasy that one day this like really rad punk band is going to call me and I'm going to be ready at all times. And so I wish it was because I was like into neuroscience, but it's really because I wish I was a punk rock singer and I ended up a YouTuber. And so it's just me trying to live that out. It's from my high school self.
You play guitar, right?
Yeah. Not very well, but I love it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that's not the case. I just want you to know I have a guitar in the corner way over here. You can't see it. And there's strings broken. But I really have high intentions someday of becoming someone that can like jam session at night, you know, like when the fire's going and everybody's hanging out after dinner, like little jam session. That would be my goal.
And you just like play Wonderwall and have everyone
like, some Ben Harper.
Yeah, dude. Well, see, that's real good. He's really good. Did you break your strings like jamming?
I broke my strings because I haven't used it. And they just sort of, I probably like didn't loosen them when I flew, you know, it could have been something simple like that.
You just rocked them off. That's cool.
Yeah, that'd be much cooler.
How are you?
I'm so good. And you seem so good. You seem very happy.
Yeah, we're good. We have like 1,000 business owners on campus. And so I was just speaking to that crew and somebody asked me like about my job and is like, man, this is like a glitch in the matrix. I feel like we're running a scam here that we get paid for this. And so it's good.
Because it's so easy and natural. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not easy, but it's definitely not the 24/7 of my previous life. And so this is cool.
I love your show. I love that you do live callers. I feel like that's so compelling. It's a pressure cooker, I'm sure, but it's cool because, you know, it's happening real time and people can plug themselves into those moments. And I feel like those are the most applicable. I love when I hear an actual story happening because that's where stuff gets relatable. Like, and people are raw and you make them get raw, like real quick.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And my team intentionally leaves me in the dark on most of it. Like I'll usually get a line or two. And so it's good I think we have a culture that's pretty obsessed with Insta answers, and that's just not how our lives work. And to get dropped into, to be honored enough to have somebody reach out and say, hey, I don't have anybody else to call and I don't know you and you don't know me, but I trust you. Will you sit with me while I unpack this? That's pretty cool. And when I first started the show, I thought that everybody was coming to me because I was so smart. I was such a genius and they loved all my genius answers. And I learned really quick, nobody cared about that. What they cared about was they don't have a picture of what it looks like to sit with somebody who's hurting and just say, I'm sorry, this is awful. And let's figure out. And so it's more the model than I think the answers. Almost everyone who calls my show like knows what I'm going to say. I'm kind of a broken record in many aspects, right? Like they know what I'm going to say. They've just never said it out loud. They've never said, hey, like I was sexually abused, like this happened, or I cheated on my husband again and he doesn't know. How do I tell him? Like, they know what I'm going to say. Like, you got to tell them, but they've never said that out loud and had somebody not wag their finger at them. And I just look around. It doesn't work. And I'd much more rather say, like, well, pass the nachos and grab a beer. Let's figure this out. And I think that's where healing happens.
This brings me to this sort of like little conundrum curiosity, because it makes me want to ask, is the healing already initiated before they call because they're ready to call and they really know what you're going to say? Do you think that's already like in motion?
There's some research that suggests once you make a call and make an appointment, your body starts lightening up. Like you have taken, your body now trusts you that you're driving. And like I know you've talked to him on your show, like talking to, elite military guys. Those dudes their heartbeat goes up, right? But they've got a gang and they're training. They're not anxious when they're out there. And because your body doesn't get anxious if you're driving, if it knows you're in the driver's seat, no matter how, no pun intended here, right? But if you're driving, no matter how wild the situation is, your body's not going to respond with anxiousness because you're in the driver's seat. It's when you get put in the backseat of your own life that your body starts sounding the alarms. And so when you make that call and you say, all right, help, then your body's like, oh, you're driving now. Cool. We can get some support here. And so I don't know what I wish that someone could figure out. And I'm glad that we can't, to be honest with you. There's some sort of alchemy. It's woven into every religious system throughout all of human history, this idea of confession. And I think we've turned it into a tell me all the bad things you've done. That's not the origin of confession. The origin of confession is, yeah, me too. Right. Like this is what happened to me. Do you still love me? And so I think that's woven into all of human history, this idea that we got to say it out loud in front of somebody else and be heard and know that we're still loved. And I think that's what the research says about counselors. Like, it doesn't care what your methodology is. It doesn't care what your background is, where you went to school. What matters is the relationship between those two people.
Well, you keyed up on a word that I love, alchemy. It's because when your inner world changes, your outer world, the way you see it changes. Like, we see things the way we are. We don't see things the way they are. And when you make that change inside, is that what you're trying to, like, that's the alchemy? Like, you change yourself and then you change your reality, essentially. Like, you've made that decision and you've changed something.
Or you've said, I understand that my inside is not matching reality on the outside. I'm outsourcing that to you. Like, what do you see? And often a good therapist, we tell people, when I used to be a grad school professor, I would tell them, like, your gift is holding up a mirror to somebody and letting them know that you're not going to go anywhere, that you're not running on them like their dad did, like their mom did, like their first 4 romantic partners did. You're here. And there's just a gift in that. But like, when I get anxious and when I get worked up, I'm a lot. My wife tells me, when I get worked up, I know that my frontal lobe goes offline. I'm not going to make the most rational decisions. And so often I outsource that. I got a couple of men in my life that have been ride or die for years. And I call them and say, hey, I got this issue. Am I seeing this right? And they'll be like, no, you moron. Like, that person gave you a great response. Why are you And so I think that's important to know when I can be in touch with my inner reality and help it change my external reality, and also know I don't think my insides are matching reality on the outside. I'm going to get some support here.
So the conundrum part that I was saying earlier is, like, I think that there's already something in motion. You say, yes, there's something happening, but the problem, the heart, it's going to be hard work. Look, it's like the going through the emotional alchemy, the actual changing of the patterns, that is hard shit, like really hard. And it feels wrong because it's not normal. So it feels really, really wrong. But the real question is how do you get to the point that you want to do that? Like, that's the hard part. The hard part, yes, it's going to be emotional. It's going to be difficult. But like the actual part, I always tell people when, they talk to me and if they have difficult things going on, I'm like, the fact that you're where you are, you've literally taken 48 years to get to this point. You're so close. Now, the most painful part is left, but like, you've come so far. So like, how do you get the come so far to not be so far?
I mean, I think we've tried a great experiment by making education mandatory. I think we tried to put information in people's heads, and for some that works. I mean, we could get super nerdy here, but we're on the back end of the enlightenment where the best way we can know something truly is to take it apart to all of its pieces and learn everything about each individual piece. And what I need to do is I can learn about each individual piece, and then I'm going to put that inside your head, and then you're going to know me. I'm going to tell you, you're going to learn about all the things I've said, all the things I've done, and all of the fill in the blank. And then you'll know me. And now we are learning, the individual pieces. You can spread out. I can spread out a motorcycle engine and learn about each one of the pieces. That doesn't teach me what a combustion engine, how it works. I don't know how it works, right? And so what we're finding is it's not the individual pieces, it's the interaction between all the pieces all at the same time. And so at the end, I can learn about a bunch of individual people, and dude, they act differently when they're in a mosh pit, when they're in a mob, right? It's a different animal. And so I think we had this obsession with, if I can just learn all the rules, or I tell my mental health students, like, we've lied to people. We told them mental health is just all the right thoughts in the right order. And that's not true. That's not mental health. Mental health is an entire infinity loop of your body and your relationships and your spiritual life and your systems that you're thrown in your environment and the thoughts that you think, right? So it's all of it all together. And so ultimately, it's an old trope, but I think it's right. When the pain of staying the same is perceived to be less than the pain of change, I think that's when it happens. And for some of us, you can see your older brother get arrested and you can go, I don't ever want to feel like that. And so I'm going to not drink. I'm going to not get in fights or whatever. Some people see their friend cheat on their wife and they're like, man, that blew up his whole life. I guess I'll probably get away with it, right? Then they got to go through it themselves. And so I wish we could just teach somebody and here's a roadmap. And I think that's what education is good for. But on the back end, I think there's therapists on the back end for, I'll sit with you when you blow up your whole life. And I wish there was an answer to that, but I think that trope is right. When the pain of being 100 pounds overweight becomes harder than the hell it's going to be to lose 100 pounds. I think that's the magic.
Have you found that everyone's threshold is very different?
Very different.
Mm-hmm.
Very different.
What do you think dictates that?
Probably a cosmic gumbo of genetics and what you grew up with and experiences you had, and whether you were resilient when you experienced trauma A versus trauma B. I mean, I think it's a whole bunch. I can on a light level, I can see my kids and say, hey kids, let's only eat marshmallows for dinner. And let's sit around a campfire out at our place, and let's camp out in the front yard, and let's get up really early and go hiking. And then let's eat marshmallows for lunch. My wife has an ability to see to 4:00 the next afternoon when all the kids have melted down and they're screaming and crying and running around. I literally can't see that. I can't project it. I'll just say like, hey, that's a problem for future, John. We'll figure it out then. And she's like, yeah, I'm usually the one that has to figure that out. And so I have a very short term, this would be so fun right now. And she has a very long term, and this is what it's going to cost us. And so I think I need people in my life on one end, and she can also find herself going to bed at 8:00, surrounded by lists without any adventure. Right. And so I think that's where other people are really important in our lives.
Anxiety is fascinating to me because, and I like how you start off like in the book, it's for every kind of anxiety, because when I think about it, I'm like, I feel very fortunate that I'm not someone that suffers from anxiety and I know that because I've only had it a few times, and I know that because I've felt it. It's almost like, and it's like when you ask somebody if they've had an orgasm and they're like, I don't know. It's like, then no.
No, you know.
Then no.
Exactly.
And so like I've experienced it like 3 or 4 times, which is not much. And I'm really, really grateful for that, because when I did, it was like, oh, I know what this is. I can't escape this spiral. I'm spiraling. I can't choose a good thought right now. It's like I have a super heightened anxiety, like super heightened, like body function, like heart rate's going up, and like I felt it. And so I'm very curious about anxiety and what really brings it, what really makes it part of someone's life, especially in a chronic way. I'm very curious about childhood from that perspective, but I do love how you say that it's a smoke signal. People want to cure anxiety, but that's just the symptom.
Let me back out real quick. So I want to ask you, how does your body get your attention?
It's something I've had to learn how to get more in touch with. In fact, as a mini story, I was just at the gym with my friend this morning, and the trainer, she had never been there. So she was just coming to visit me, and he asked her how she was feeling, how many more reps could you do? And she's like, I don't know. And so we come from a CrossFit background where it was just like, this is what you do. Here's the clock. That's it. It doesn't matter what the hell your body tells you. And so I was driving home and I'm like, well, that's because we're used to not being tuned into the body at all. Like all you have to do is just like, I'll do anything. So I'm sure if he'd have told you to do 20 more, you would have. If he told you to do 2, you would have. And so getting in tune and in touch with the body is something that I had to learn probably, 5 years ago. And so how does it get my attention? I mean, I can feel it in my gut. I can feel tightness, yeses or full body goosebumps. I'm feeling it in my body, and the yeses in the nose.
What does it do in times of stress? Does it doesn't amp you up, which is anxiousness. It doesn't spin you out and try to solve problems 30 miles down the road. Does it pull you down?
Actually, getting tired is a common one.
There you go. Yeah. A conversation started about a decade ago, and I was at some nerd conference and just surrounded just nerds hanging out with nerds. And somebody's walking through the genetics of ADHD. And at the time, we thought we had won the lottery and oh, it's a genetic disorder. And the presenter wisely said, hey, by the way, genetics will explain a piece of this, but you can't just say this is genetic, because that's not how genetics work. Everybody didn't all get this at the same time. And that, as I left, I remember thinking, because I was just melted with anxiety, just decimated with it. And by the way, my parents are still married, the 50-something years. My dad was a policeman and a SWAT guy in Houston. My mom's a brilliant professor. My wife loved me most of the time. I had a healthy kid. I had no business on paper having anxiety. Silly, right? And I remember leaving, and it was the first time the thought entered my mind, what if my body's working perfectly? What if this anxiety, what if the ADHD, which the body's response to chaos, what if fatigue? Your body's like, hey, we're getting out of here, and we're going to wrap it up into something that you will digest, which is sleep. Let's just go to bed. Let's just, we think of fighting and fleeing. We think of fleeing as running and screaming. Fleeing is often just turning Netflix on, turn it kind of quiet and get under the covers, right? So what if our bodies are working perfectly? What would that say about the world we've created when everyone has everything? You can push a button on your cell phone and food just shows up at your house. Evolutionarily, that's madness, right? You can go in a bathroom and turn a knob and water comes out. That's madness, right? We've solved for everything. And you could punch a button and communicate with 1 million people right now. Evolutionarily, that's insane. And our bodies are more depressed and more exhausted and more anxious than in recorded human history. What gives? And so I'm somebody who began to work backwards. What is anxiety doing in your body and in your brain? Oh, dude, it's just trying to get our attention. Anxiety work means most of the time our bodies are working pretty damn well. So I have to ask a way harder question, which is not, hey, how do I shut this alarm system off? But what is happening in my life to set this alarm off? And that means I have had to have hard conversations with my wife. Are we going to stay married? I've had to ask myself, am I going to stay at this job? I've had to ask myself, that's time to change careers. I can't hang out with these people. I got to quit drinking. I got whatever the things are in your life. Those are way harder than just climbing up in your kitchen and pulling the batteries out of your smoke detector, right?
Do you believe that everyone has to address essentially traumas in childhood to make that step forward to figuring things out, and why they are not able to process certain things, or why they have certain reactions, why they're triggered in certain ways, because that all leads to more anxiety?
I always hesitate when I'm talking about health or emotional health or mental health to say the word always, everybody, but I haven't yet met that person, right, who doesn't have some stories. I like to be careful with, and I don't want to be over dramatic, but with language like figure out, or solve, because I don't want to treat my body like a Law and Order SVU unit episode, right? I would prefer to just, and this is just recent for me, man, if I'm curious versus trying to figure out what the hell's going on here, it's just the cascade of my response, both in my body and my relationships, how I treat my kids and my coworkers. Everything's just different. If I start getting angry every time my wife comes in the room and I try to figure it out, what I'm going to figure out is that she's causing this. Otherwise, if I ask myself, how come every time she walks in, my body starts trying to defend itself? I need to get to the bottom of that. Then that's a very, that's a gentle way of saying, let's figure this out. Same as if my 7-year-old daughter, she's like living with a blender without the top on. She's a human hurricane, dude. She's incredible. And if she does something goofy, I can yell and scream. I can be like, I'm figuring this out. And I'll crush her. Or I can sit down and go, dude, what happened? She's like, I squeezed the lizard and now it's not alive. Like, one is very compassionate and very like, let's get to the bottom. And one is very like Law and Order, right? Let's solve this thing. And so, yeah, I've got to figure out, why does my body sound the alarms when my wife comes in? She loves me. I love her. I need to pull the string on that. And I'm going to gently walk it back over a couple of years and figure out, dude, what is my body trying to protect me from when this person I care about walks in the door? Oh, maybe when I was a child, it was my job. When dad got home, it's probably good for me just to hide, just to be small, just to disappear.
You have the ability to do that. Most people don't have that level of awareness of like, maybe it's like most, I mean, I'm similar. Like, I had a great childhood. My parents are still married. Like, we wanted for nothing. So I don't think it's as easy as going. I think the first step is like, okay, what is my body telling me? And right then and there, I don't think anybody is tuned into really how their body feels. Do you agree?
That's exactly right. 100%. And we you may have heard me say this in other places, like, we have something called they so gratuitously call it the attention economy. That's stupid. It's the distraction. Anything I can do to pull you apart from how your body feels. I need to keep you in your head and let you know that you are missing something that I need to sell you, or you're missing something that I can fix for you at the political level. As further away as I can get you from your body and from your close inner gang, your tribe, the better my business is going to be, the better my political angle is going to be. So yes, 1000%. And I also think this, I think often you reverse engineer your way into some of these thoughts. And so you're right. Most people, most of the time, like, just yell when they get pissed off, or when that guy cuts them off in traffic. You just yell, like, or you just grab the wheel. And so sometimes it's best when I'm sitting with somebody, okay, we're just going to start there. Stop acting like, don't yell. Never yell in your house, ever. And if you do catch yourself yelling, stop in the middle of it and walk outside. So I'm going to put these action breaks. I think we live in our heads too much. Just act right. And then that creates some space between what you were about to do and what you decided to not do. Stop spending money. Give your partner your Amazon login and you don't know how to get into it. And every time you go to buy something, stop. And that's the gap to go, dude, what was I about to buy? Why was I about to click on that? And so I think sometimes you can just reverse engineer it and create a list of actions. I'm going to quit doing this thing. I won't smoke. Well, of course you can't just like declare it like Michael Scott, like, I declare bankruptcy. You can't do that. But I can say, I'm going to quit smoking. And then every time I go to do it, what is my body trying to protect me from right now? And I think that's a good way to find that gap.
Like, what is a practice someone could do to get into their body a little bit and feel something?
This is a very unpopular answer, but I had to outsource it. I had to ask my wife. I had to ask a couple of my buddies. I had to ask a counselor. I don't want to, like, for me, I've struggled with body image issues my whole life, body dysmorphia forever. And I eat mindlessly. And so I've never struggled with alcohol. I've never struggled with like doing drugs, but dude, I like to rub gummy candies on my face, like, and pour them down my shirt. Like, I just love it, dude. And so, but I eat mindlessly. And especially when I have relationship issues, I just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. and I get real angry. I've got anger issues. And so I would ask like my wife, hey, if you see me, just ask, hey, are you really hungry? And she does it very gently. When it first started, it was very accusational, and I was like, it didn't go well. But she will just ask, hey, that's the 9th marshmallow. Are you hungry? And I'll go, I should probably quit eating marshmallow. You know what I mean? It's like but I wish I could say I was just like snap it to a Slim Jim. But I ask people who love and care about me to quietly hold me accountable and just gently ask, like, hey man, why are you so mad? Dude, your jaw is clenched. Are you angry at somebody? And I'll be like, oh, dude, I was creating imaginary stories about what I was going to tell my boss in my head, and I was running on loop. Didn't even think about it. And so then next time, maybe I catch my jaw clenching up, or maybe next time I catch myself reaching into the jelly bean bowl. But we have lied to ourselves as though we can do all this crap by ourselves. You can't. The human body's not designed to run this whole thing alone. It's just not. And it's a lie. And so I have to have other people in my life walking alongside being like, hey, there's a hole there you're about to step in again. And I have to say, dude, thank you so much for seeing in the road where I couldn't see.
Well, it's this beautiful reality that people are a mirror for us.
Always, especially if they love you and you have your best interest at heart, right? And you know as well as I do, there's people who like to walk alongside you so they can say they're walking alongside you, or people who walk alongside you because they might get something out of it. And I think that's part of some folks' journey is to get those people out of your life. But yeah, if people truly love you, they'll hold a mirror up to you. And like a therapist earlier, they won't leave. They'll be there.
But even the practice of letting someone be the mirror for yourself, meaning like when I get into a situation, if I have a reaction, I know that I have a part in it. Like I have been triggered somehow. And so like in my head, I'm going, okay, what's my part in this? Like, why did I react like that? What am I afraid of? Of the situation, what was I afraid of? What's the story I'm telling myself? So like, we don't even actually need someone always to tell us something. We can use them as a mirror for ourselves.
That's mentorship. Somebody walked alongside you along the way and said, well, like you may be with some girlfriends. You'd be like, can you believe this person broke up with me? And they can be like, oh, yeah, because you treated them like that. And you're like, me? Right. And so over time, that's mentorship. That's iron sharpens iron. And then later on, you're able to go, yeah, I can feel myself getting hot. I'm just going to let this person, my partner, know I need to cool off. Right. And I think over time, yeah, you get released to the wild that way. That's just maturity. That's just growing up, I think. Was wisdom.
I would call it maybe spirituality or like quantum physics or like trying to understand the nature of reality. And for me, that's also been a super helpful dynamic just to go, oh, wow, like, am I creating my world? And like, am I, we are all our own little universe. And I am just sort of seeing myself through everybody. I mean, I think so when you were talking about some of the, having that pause moment and being able to go, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. Or maybe I reacted a little bit like that's like a steps along part of the process. That's being mindful, which I know is one of those 6 daily choices. Like that's mindfulness. And that takes a long time.
Oh, yeah, dude, I'm 10 years into yeah, exactly. So it takes a lot of practice, but my hope is that people can see it, man. It doesn't diminish from my fun and my just being a goofball, and it doesn't diminish from my professional life or my academic life or whatever, or my marriage. But man, it sure makes my metabolic health better. It stops all that rumination and drama that I was bathing in all the time.
I'm just sort of fascinated by that. How do you get like, I would call it more of the observer perspective. Like, how do you get above the situation? Like, what are some ways that you've done that? Like, instead of being something happens and you're in it. How I describe it. You're in it. You're triggered. Somebody did this. It's their fault. And then how do you get above it?
I think a couple of things. One is I worked for 15 years to create a life where I remained out of the fray as best as possible. I grew up with a policeman for dad, and there was seasons when, I don't know if you know, like they just don't pay cops anything. And so there was seasons when we didn't have grocery. I mean, there was tough seasons. And so for 15 years, my wife and I worked coming from nothing and then going to college because that's what you're supposed to do, and ran up a whole bunch of student loans and whatever. Like, and her parents were elementary school teachers. And so like we worked for 15 years to not owe anybody anything. And so I don't have to get into it for survival. Right. And it's not that we're rich. It's just that like we made peace with the Corolla life, dude. We made peace with used cars. And what that gave us was, dude, y'all, I don't even have to go to the fight because I don't have a dog in it. Right. Like you can just slowly remove yourself. Or I went to counseling to figure out, man, why do I care that much what people think? Oh, because I'm so desperate for people. I don't have 2 PhDs because I'm super smart. I have 2 PhDs because I've been begging since I was a little kid. Do you see me and think I'm smart too? Because I had a brilliant sister and a savant little brother. And so I wanted to not just be the dumb jock. And so I've been begging people to say I'm smart too. And so once I unhooked from that, and it's like, man, I don't care anymore. Then suddenly I don't have a stake in that fight. I don't have to get into all those fights. And so for me, it's been less about how do I solve it when I'm in the middle of it? Because if I wait till I'm in the middle of it, dude, I'm in the middle of it. It's how can I remove gently or sometimes systematically over time the need to even participate in it.
One of the most powerful things my therapist told me years ago was no one holds the keys.
There you go. But that's a terrifying thought, right?
Oh, that's exactly what I said. I started crying and I was like, that's heavy. It's a lot. And she's like, well, you don't have to do it alone. You have me, you have people that you can lean on, but like no one can just tell you I'm sorry and you'll feel better.
No, it's not how it works. Because you've got family, you've got genetics, you've got history, you've got too much in that machine that already gets kicked off down the road once that thing happens, right? And so I'm going to get all the way on the front end of it. And I think we have a culture, and even in the book, I didn't write a bunch of strategies for how to deal with it when you have anxiety, how to deal with it when you're panicked, all right? That book's out there. There's a million of that book out there. There's a million blog posts about that. I'm way more interested in how do I create a life so that my alarms aren't ringing all the time? How do I create relationships so that I can identify a leech when I see it, or I can see a train wreck coming before I'm in the middle of it? And that's just intentionality. And quite honestly, it's probably the same way if somebody came up to you and said like, hey, I want to get into driving. How do I do that? You would be like, you got to practice. And so I think thinking about controlling my thoughts and thinking about unhooking myself from these systems and thinking about, dude, I'm feeling myself getting geared up. I'm going to practice de-escalating. I think over time, it just becomes second nature, right? It just becomes part of your nervous system if you work at it, just like anything else we work at.
Do you think there are archetypal trauma patterns in
that's
people?
A good question. I mean, there's nervous system responses. There's fight, flight, and freeze, and fawning, and I mean, so yeah, I think there's probably
kind of like not enough, or not, like some core fundamental issues, like I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel like I'm enough, or I'm worthless, or there's like some core kind of. Do you think that there are just like core trauma patterns within people, narratives, maybe a better word?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jung talks about the stories, right? Just those common narratives that run through all of civilization. I tend to take a more evolutionary psychology approach, which is if your tribe leaves you, you're probably going to die. So wired into us at the DNA level is this: I have to belong, and belonging means I have to shut down part of myself so that you'll still love me, and so that you won't leave, and so that you won't leave our romantic partnership and go with that guy in our tribe. And so I think it's as simple as that. As at the core of it is, do you really know me? All the dark stuff. Do you know me and the good stuff? And do you still love me? I think the nervous system response comes from that place, because we can't be left.
And you talked about we're not meant to do this alone. Do you think that because the way that society operates now is hopefully a two-parent home, but many times not, and not even that much more, right? Like it used to be a community. There was grandma, there was grandpa, there was aunts and uncles, there was cousins, and like it was really community like. And if you track back further in history, even more so, like it was like there's tribe mentality. Like, do you think that's part of why we are so, because we essentially, what I'm kind of going towards is like, we have to shut down so many things so that we can be, so we survive, so that we have food and a shelter. And so we shut down so many parts of it because we just literally have to like adapt to the one person. Yeah. So like, there's so many things that have to shut down, where if we had 8 people that took care of us in a big way, we would be able to be ourselves in many of those places. Like we wouldn't have to shut so many parts of us down because this one imprint has to happen to survive. Do you think that's a big part of our problem in society?
No question about it. Yeah, you nailed it. We've created the loneliest generation in human history.
Yeah.
And we're surrounded by people. And Esther Perel talks about this really eloquently. We just expect this other person that we get married to or we decide to do life to, they have to be everything. They have to be a co-earner. They have to be hot, and we have to keep having sex until we're 95. They have to be like the perfect dinner companion. They have to laugh at all my jokes. They have to think all the Will Ferrell movies are funny or not funny. They have to like Seinfeld or not like Seinfeld. Funny. Of course they are. But they have to be everything. And she talks so beautifully about that. Used to be like part of that. That was the job of the church, and part of that was the job of your grandparents, and part of that was the charge of the men in the tribe, and this is the part of the women. And you just dump all that on that one person. Of course they leave, or of course they melt, right? And so, how do you create a marriage in this new system that we've done? How do you create partnerships and relationships? And I remember early on I just didn't know how to be married. I didn't know what we were doing. We got married really young, my wife and I. And I remember thinking, like, it's unfair to put all of this on one person. She can't think everything I think is funny and like punk music and want to go listen to me talk about track times. I was a track and field coach. And dude, I should watch her eyes roll in the back of her head when I was running off splits. She was like, I can't tell you how little I care about the split times of your 4x4 relay team. And at first I was like, you don't love me. You don't know me, right?
Because it's important to me, so it should be important to you.
It's not should. It has to be. You and I have to. That's madness, right? It's insane. Right. And so it becomes a negotiation of, no, I know this is important to you, so I'm going to sit through the one track meet. You get one, right? And I'll go to one punk rock show with you, and you got to go see George Strait with me. And so it just became this incredible enrichment, right? And I'm not threatened anymore by, hey, I think I'm going to go get my master gardener certification. Well, that sounds incredible. I'm going hunting, right? And we can both go our separate ways, but we're still anchored into the same place. But yeah, I think you nailed it. It's a big experiment, and it doesn't seem to be going well, which is, what if one person is responsible for all of this? What if 2 people are responsible for all of this? And I'll say this, I'll go on record saying this. If you're doing this by yourself, if you are trying to do it all, work full-time, raise a family, be an advocate in your community, do retirement, have a nice car, have hobbies, have friends. If your body recognizes you're out there alone, and by the way, you can be lonely in a crowded room, right? We all know that. You can be infinitely lonely at a table surrounded by loved ones, right? Your body would be failing you if it let you sleep all night. It'd be failing you. It would be failing you if it let you have a deep, connected, intimate sexual relationship with your wife or your husband, because your body's trying to not die, because you're all you got. And so we try to solve all these external things, all these proxies. We're trying to change the bulbs in the dashboard on our car. That doesn't put gas in the car, right? So I've got to look at my life. What am I expecting my body to do when I put it in this precarious situation that way? And that means I got to do something that really sucks. And that's go make friends as an adult. And that's the worst, right? I got to go make community. I got to go be weird and vulnerable. And we just don't have any tools for that.
You said the word lonely, and you said, how it's easy to be lonely even at a table full of people that love you. And I'm curious about that, because even from my own experience, I've never actually been lonely by myself. The only time I've been lonely is in a relationship before.
Tell me about that.
Why is that? Well, that's the only time I've actually felt lonely. And
Why?
and
Where is that from? Where does that stem from?
I would say not being chosen. That's what it feels like to me, that not being chosen. And it's actually like, and probably what it really is I have so deeply abandoned my own self to be in this situation that I am separate from myself in the biggest way. When I'm alone, I'm it's not somebody's not choosing me. I'm choosing myself. I'm honoring myself and what I want to do each day and what I need to do and what makes me better and my interests. But in a relationship, when it's not the right one and there's discord, it's difficult, I am actually abandoning myself by staying in it. And I think that's probably why I've felt the most lonely in relationships.
Yeah, you said that beautifully. Like a simpler way I would say abandoning self is keeping secrets. When I have to hide part of myself so that the story I tell myself is I got to hide this part of me so that you won't leave, that always ends in ash. And I think the signal is your body saying, hey, whoa, you're completely alone here. You're holding this dude's hand and y'all are walking in a place that you said you wanted to be together, but you're keeping secrets. You're not telling the truth. You're not being whole. And the fear is he's going to go. And I think that, that never plays out. But I think who are we most scared of is going to leave us? Our family. And so we don't talk politics because I don't want that guy to storm off and I don't want her to get all mad. And so I just be quiet. And we haven't created a space where it's okay for you and me to believe different things or to think different things at your table. And so then I go out and curate echo chamber friends and who just believe all the same things and we do all the same things. And that's a good proxy. But man, when you're surrounded by people that you love, you know what's at stake. They might go. And that's the hope is you see me and you might roll your eyes, right? My mom saw my first tattoo one time. She was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And then she's like, let me see. And I know my mom still loved me, right? So it's she's not going anywhere.
And what the most interesting thing is that a lot of times it's when we are the most comfortable and we share the most with someone that we end up being loved the most for all of those things. But we don't want to show it to the person we're afraid to lose. Why is that?
I wonder if you're talking about quantum physics and knowing. I wonder if we know. I wonder if we know.
Like on a subconscious or
I
like
think your body
energetic
knows.
level.
That guy's not safe. She's not safe. And you ever find yourself talking to somebody and 15 minutes in, you're like, I've known this person forever. And 30 minutes in, you're like having conversations and you're like, oh my gosh, my boyfriend doesn't know this. I think your body goes, I feel safe. This one's okay. And I think that's something to listen to and honor. I really do. And the joke, when I was 18, I went to this like class and they were like, when you go to college, they're going to strip all of your beliefs from you and they're going to like corrupt you. So write down the 10 things that your future spouse has to have. And I was like, oh yeah. And I wrote them down and we just finished 21 years of being married. And my wife had 2 of the 10 that I wrote down when I was 18, man. I wasn't even close. It was just so stupid. But here's what was important. I kept coming back to, she doesn't have this and she doesn't like this and I like this, but she doesn't like that. But dude, when we were together, my body felt safe. Whew. And it never occurred to me. That's where you start building from. Y'all are anchored into the same value system. Believe different stuff. Who cares? Are you anchored into the same values? And that's a different place to start.
Body's keeping the score all the time.
All day long. Yeah. All day long.
Do you find that is there common problems with men and common problems with women, like that are separate?
When it comes to
what are the most common?
Like when it comes to like anxiety?
Yeah.
Terrence Real is just he wrote the most important book of the last 20 years, I think. I don't want to talk about it. That's the name of the book, by the way.
Oh, that's clever.
I don't want to talk about it. But he was the first person I ever saw pull apart the statistics in a way that was real eye-opening for me. Because if you look at the diagnostics, women are way more depressed than men. Women are way more anxious than men. They're diagnosed with those things more. They go to therapy for those things more. And he was the first person I ever saw that said, no, it's just that women express anxiety this way or depression this way. Men puff their chest up and go punch somebody. Men drink a lot to shut the alarm systems off. They do drugs to shut the alarm systems off. They run. And so if you look at prison populations and you look at violent crime and you lay that over the mental health diagnostics of women, now you get a more equal picture. And so I think men and women experience it differently. Like when it comes to ADHD, little boys will act bananas. Girls often will shut the whole system down. So I think, yeah, there's some differentiation. I just got to a point where I don't like to think diagnostically anymore. I like to sit with somebody and say, what's your body trying to protect you from? And it might protect you from getting loud. It might protect you by getting real quiet, but let's just start there, man. The labels can be helpful for insurance companies and sometimes for naming the dragon, but man, I'm way more interested in how are you trying to protect yourself? When I got one kid bouncing off the walls and I got one kid who just goes into neutral in school and then gets in the car and is back to bouncing off the walls, that tells me, your body's telling you that system isn't safe. That environment's not safe. Let's start there.
Then what do you do? Because there's going to be some pretty fundamental problems with people if they're not safe in a situation like with their partner. I mean, you're about to rock their world.
Yeah. And that's the, I think, going back to the distraction economy, I think that many of us have a reality reckoning either happening to us right now or it's on its way or it has happened, because you can get all the money in the world and you're going to get that phone call from your mom that says, honey, I got cancer. You're going to borrow money and borrow money and borrow money. And you just think you're just going to keep getting that bonus. Your sales numbers are just going to keep hitting that sales numbers. And then one day you don't. And the government's going to tell you, hey, we're going to bail you out. And then they don't. Right. Or you're just going to I just need to get that degree from that place. And I don't care what it costs. I'll just borrow it because I'll pay it off later. It doesn't. Right. And so I think there is you got to deal with reality, and you can have the home. And as we talked earlier, and you can shut down half your system trying to keep that facade of that thing going. And that's how family trauma rolls down generation to generation, is your kids absorb that tension of you holding down who you are. And they think, oh, dude, I'm doing that to my mom. I'm doing that to my dad. And they try to solve it. And then they end up in that same pattern over and over and over again. And it takes somebody saying, I've spoken a lot with my wife. There was a couple of times over 21 years where we've sat across a table like grown-ups and said, hey, are we going to keep doing this? And if it's time for us to call it, then we're going to be adults and we're going to figure out what that means. But we can't keep doing this thing we call marriage like this. And I hope you don't want to go because I don't, but I can't keep doing this. So we had to build something completely new. And then we had to build something new again. Then we had to build something new again. And so I think that's the event, right? But I think what you said, you're going to rock their world. You're damn right we are. And I think a whole lot of people need to have the world rocked because they're living in a world that's not real.
I want to go through the 6 daily choices, and I've come up with a question for each category, and I kind of want you to articulate each, what you mean by it, because when you just say the word, it's maybe not enough. I want to hear from your perspective what you mean by it. So with choose reality, like when you say reality, explain the thought behind that.
Like there's something important about the exercise of getting quiet and writing down on a piece of paper, what is the state of my marriage? What is the state of my dating relationship? What's the state of my health? I'm looking at a blood panel here, or how overweight am I? How underweight am I? What's the state of my job? Like being honest about where you actually are, not on either side of it's all coming down. No, it's not. Or, oh, it's all going to be the same. No, it's not. Right. There's something about sitting down and owning reality. And earlier we were talking about when your body knows you're driving, then it doesn't need to sound the alarms because you're in control. It's when you're separate from reality, when you're in the backseat of your own life, somebody else is running your life for you, that your body tries to get your attention. So there's something important about sitting with your partner, sitting with a couple of close friends you trust, and saying, hey, my kid walks in the front door every day and just slams the door and goes in their room. Oh, those teens. No, that's not right. It's not true. It's not reality. Let's own reality. Your kid does not feel safe in the room with you, or does not like you, does not want to be in the room with you. We got to deal with that. Let's deal with that.
why is it that people have such a hard time being accountable? What is the most common story people tell themselves about what it means if they admit to falling short, or admit to not being good at something, or not knowing what to do? Like, why is it that it's so hard to be accountable?
Yeah, that's the whole culture we've created. That if you're uncomfortable, it's somebody else's fault. I just don't think we have a psychology for it. I think that's when Jocko said, take ownership. I mean, people's eyes bugged out of their heads. You mean just stand in front of my boss and say, I made the call and I was wrong? And it's like, well, why would anyone do that? And without understanding that's the path to freedom. And I mean, look at the political. If somebody would stand up and say, I made a call and I blew it, and here's what I'm doing to make it right, I think that person would just be escorted into the office the next election on a, you know what I mean?
Because you'd actually believe them when they said they did do something.
Yes.
The problem is with not being able to be honest is that you never believe you don't know when they're right. And if you at least say, look, fucked up, man.
That's me. That's
on me. Or like, and then also you'll know, like, hey, get it together. You're not, I need you to do this. And then when they say good job, or when you've done something really well, like it conveys honesty. It's true. It makes everything else true when you say when something is essentially off or wrong, or you could have done better.
But I don't think we have a psychology of blame. If you're uncomfortable, it's somebody else's fault. Find out who that is. You are perfect, and you get to construct truth as you go along. You get to make it up as you go, which is different than I've got my own internal reality that I'm experiencing, right? We talked about that. But I think you have to simply blow that out of the water. But I don't think people have a psychology for it. Because it's like, seriously, I'm just going to sit in front of my wife and say, hey, dude, I just yelled a couple hours ago, and I shouldn't have done that.
Do you think they just feel justified, though? Do you think it's just that they just
No, I think justification comes as your body. That's a defense mechanism to let you sleep at night. I don't think people usually are internally justified. But here's the thing. I get to create the story. That's the beauty of it. That guy cuts me off in traffic. I can just flip him off and be like, you piece of crap. Like, you just doing drugs, you stupid millennial, and your dumb dropped Honda Civic, you moron. I can do that. Or he can cut me off listening to, and I can exhale and say, God, please help this dude get to the hospital before his wife dies. None of those stories are going to impact that dude at all. Zero. None of them. His life is going on the way he's going on. One of those is going to give me a stroke, and one of those is going to bring me towards peace and a little closer to empathy and a little more love. Why would I choose the other story? So I get to make that up. But if I start seeking justification, dude, that's a recipe for burning everybody you love to the ground.
Choosing connection. I love this.
Yeah, it's what we talked about. We've created the loneliest generation, and we've been told we can do it ourselves. Yeah. And it's madness. It's insane.
What is it that we subconsciously fear with these deep connections and vulnerability? What's the story we tell ourselves there?
Well, I think on one end, I think we have I don't think we've gotten lonely on purpose. I think that's purely accidental. I think we talk to our friends via text, and we have those hilarious long text threads of emojis and funny GIFs and memes that are just awesome. And 80 to 90% of communication is nonverbal. And I think our bodies are screaming at us that we're alone, but we've outsourced it all to a bunch of zeros and ones. And so we're only communicating with 10 to 20% of black and white text. And I could text my wife 100 times today, I love you and you're beautiful, but her body doesn't register it until she sees my eye crinkles and she sees me drop my shoulders and she feels me grab her and hug her, like, and mean it, right? Then her body feels loved and safe. Not just, I love you. And then I walk in, I think I told you 100 times today via text. And then I just grab a drink and go up and watch, TV. Yeah. Dude, that's not connection, right?
Yeah. What do you say? Technology satisfies who, where, what, when, and how, but but it doesn't give you the connection to be seen and experienced. Like the seen and experience connection is
that, and experienced is a beautiful word for vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, that's your words. I'm just wrote down what you said. Well, you wrote.
I thought you said that. I didn't think
I was that eloquent. You said that.
Vulnerability will get you killed. That's why it sucks. That's why your body fights you on. It'll get you killed. And It's the only path towards truly being safe with somebody and truly being able to drop your shoulders. And that's the elite military guys. They go around the room and say, what did I do good in that mission? What did I screw up in that mission? What am I going to do different next time? That's vulnerability, right? I got you implies you're going to get faced with a situation that you don't see the full picture. I got you. That's vulnerability. Telling your husband or your boyfriend, I blew it last night. I'm sorry. They might say, and I'm out. And that's you being vulnerable and you getting killed. Or they might say, thank you so much. Right. And there's no way forward. Look around, man. Being all the tough guy stuff just doesn't work.
Okay. The next one with choose freedom. Such an interesting word I've experienced throughout time. Go ahead with choosing freedom.
I think I wrote in there that it's not like about American flag underwear and like pew pew and the eagle, like, oh, like that's not what I mean. I'm talking about the nerd word is agency or autonomy. And who is telling me what I'm going to do every day? And if you owe money to a car dealership, then Ford Motor Company is telling you what you will do tomorrow. I'm sick and I can't go to work. You're going to work because you're going to pay me. Or the mortgage company. And so people push back and they're like, oh, so I'm just not supposed to owe anybody money? Exactly. And that might mean you got to make peace with a Ford Taurus life because you're an assistant director of technology at a local middle school. That's amazing. Those kids need you. And you're not going to be able to fully show up if you have to have a 2025 Yukon or whatever that costs $100,000 that you can barely make the payment on. And your brain can't let you sleep because it knows if you do one thing and get laid off, you lose your house, you lose your car, you lose your food. And so when I say choose freedom, I'm talking about from clutter. I'm talking about from chaotic, insane calendars that if one thing gets 5 minutes over, your whole week falls over. Talking about freedom from owing people money. I'm talking about just unhooking yourself from the matrix and being able to say, what is best for me and my family in this upcoming season? What do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And I'm going to start with that question, not who do I got to pay? What do I have to do?
Creating your own life for yourself.
Right.
Being the designer instead of being the robot, the puppet.
Or the respondent. Yeah.
I've once heard that in a relationship, men need to feel free. Is that true? Some kind of, I was going to ask you about the types of freedom, but I was just curious about this. Like they need to feel like they can be whoever they are and do whatever they want. Like that is like a core, like male need.
I've never heard that. I don't have that.
No? Oh.
No, I want
him. That was bullshit, man.
I want a core purpose and a reason for being. And I want people to serve. And I want to know that my wife is really proud of me. And I've got to live into that. So almost the opposite of whoever told you that.
Yeah. Well, good. It didn't work out. So
that sounds like a dude who wants to hook up with other people while he's still dating the same person. That's what that sounds like. No, like every man's got to be free. Like, all right, whatever.
And then if you don't care, then I'll like you more. That seems like an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, it's not safe. That's stupid.
How is it that mindfulness is a different way of, I think you said, a different way of learning and living and experiencing the world? Like, what is it about mindfulness that's so much different? What is new about it?
You're choosing to be intentional and curious, not reactionary and judgmental. So you're choosing to enter into a room and you going in to talk to your sponsors and you can feel the tension. They're going to give you some tough news. You can feel it. And instantly your defense mechanisms kick in and you start talking too much or you start shutting down or you start getting kind of pissed off. And that's reactionary. And then the moment they're like, hey, we're hitting a rough patch, we're going to pull the ripcord on this sponsorship in the next 6 months. And you instantly go into judgment. Oh, because you guys can't freaking run your right instantly into it. Or mindfulness is a long-term practice. It's not some old dude on a cloud meditating. Like, it is a long-term intentional practice that when I feel that tension in that room and I feel my body starting to shut down, get angry, get mad, I instantly smile and go, what is my body trying to protect me from? Or I've been in an active shooter situation in a school. Like I've been in that. I am reacting to training I have, but I'm being highly intentional and highly aware, and I'm being curious, not judgmental. I don't know. I'm terrified right now. I'm scared to death. I got my training and I got my cell phone, and I'm going to do the best to take care of these students that I got. That's being curious. What comes next? See, one is a posture of response and madness, and one is a one of intentionality. I remember being around, talking when I was training MMA back in the day, years ago. And the guys who moved on to become professional fighters, we used to always laugh like, dude, your job is punching other people in the face for money. Like, that's a funny job, right? Always the calmest guys in the room, the chill most, like, huh. And I remember thinking two things. Number one, y'all have nothing to prove. Like, you do this for a living. It's what you do. You don't have to walk around flexing everybody. This is what you do. And the second thing was, the moment you get emotional in a sparring match or in a fight, you're going to lose. You get angry, you get mad, you get overzealous. I'm sure it's that way around the track. The moment I get mad, the moment I get out of a game plan is the moment I make a stupid decision and get myself in trouble. The more I can stay curious, the more I can stay intentional and aware, the better things are going to roll. It just feels like you're not clenched, you're not tightened up, so you feel less powerful. And so it's learning to find power and strength in loosening your grip, which sounds counterintuitive.
It's all a bunch of real fun polarities in this reality we call being human.
Is that similar to driving? Is that work the same?
Picture myself like getting really angry about the way someone's blocking me or something, and I could key up on the radio and start swearing and getting angry, and all it does is just pull some of my focus. It's a distraction away from what I need to be doing. So I could also take accountability, which is what I'd have to think in my head. I'd be like, it's my job to get by them. So I'm sucking right now. It's my job to get by them. And if I keep complaining about this, I am pulling my energy in a different direction, and it needs to be all here. I need to be figuring out how to do it. So getting rid of distraction is something that you've said really well. And then taking accountability, which is something that you've said is really important.
And then doing the next right thing, right?
Yeah, which is take them out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Choose health and healing. I love this.
That's just being pretty direct. I mean, I can't fathom how it became taboo to talk about, but the obesity levels and the metabolic challenges and the mental health challenges and the traumas that's just running from family system to family system to family system. You can do all the right things, man, but if your body's not healthy, your body's going to try to get your attention and let you know that you're not okay. If you haven't dealt with family trauma and you haven't been honest with somebody about the abuse or the whatever happened, your body's going to continue to try to get your attention and scream at you 24/7 that you're not safe. And so you got to enter into those spaces where I'm going to own health and healing. And it sucks, and you got to go do it.
Is it very common for someone that carries extra weight to actually be carrying the weight as a subconscious defense mechanism for rape or abuse from childhood, that it makes them unattractive so that it doesn't happen again? Is this?
I know there's some definite correlations between obesity and abuse. Absolutely. I don't know if it's the attraction or if it's just creating space, right? It's just an ability to hide behind the curtain. Just the curtain becomes you, right? I've looked at that literature in a long time, but it may be this, I'm going to intentionally become unattractive. That sounds more like a back end story to, I'm just going to separate from somebody. I'm going to disappear behind, almost like the old emo kids that had their hair in front of their face. Like, I'm just going to hide behind my hair. I'm going to hide in my own skin, right? But I think bigger than that is chronic pain. My knees hurt, my back hurts, my neck hurts. I can't go do these fun things. I can't roll around on the floor with kids. And so I think it may not be the issue in and of itself. Clearly, it's got health implications, but it begins to slowly rob you of the things that do bring you joy. And that's also my buddy who's a physician who's got he's told me for 5 years and he's going to get his neck fixed. And he's grumpy about it, and it always hurts. And I'm like, dude, choose healing. Go get your neck fixed. You can't roll around on the floor. You can't do this. Go do the things that you need to do to take care of your body.
Well, I wonder, my question is about it being actually more of a parallel example of how much you're choosing yourself and having autonomy in your life. Like the more that you continue to choose. So it's kind of like it's running a parallel to your own internal work, is like, how well are you taking care of yourself? Are you doing healing and are you doing health? Are you putting junk in your body? Are you putting off feeling better? Are you ignoring these things and then essentially being a mirror for how you're actually treating yourself, like your inner child or your internal compass?
Dude, you just nailed it. I think most people that I talk to across the country, most of the time, don't like themselves at all. They're too fat. They're not enough. They're not pretty enough. They don't have enough money. They don't have whatever. They're not a good enough lover. They just don't have, they're not enough. They just don't like themselves. And so why in the hell would I invest in a company I don't care for? I don't like. My buddy, Sal DiStefano, he's with the Mind Pump guys out in San Jose, just an amazing guy. He's more incredible behind closed doors as a friend. And I was talking to him about, I was like, dude, I've worked out my whole life. I ran track in college. Like, I'm a healthy guy. What is the deal with not thinking I'm enough? And what's the deal with like eating? And he said something so profound. He said, and this is a personal one-on-one conversation. He's like, dude, you cannot go to the gym and hate yourself into better shape, into better body. If you go to the gym and say, I'm so disgusting, I got to work this disgusting into a less disgusting form, that will run out of gas 100% of the time. If you wake up every day and you say, dude, I love myself enough that I get 1 hour. My wife and kids, my job, they get the rest, but I get 1 hour because I'm worth one freaking hour. He goes, you'll do that for the rest of your life. And so that was a game changer for me, is I'm going to choose health and healing because I'm worth that. Halfway through writing this book, I had just a break. I was like, oh, dude, I'm not living any of this crap I'm writing about. You know what I mean? And I had to go see a trauma counselor and talk about some stuff I've never admitted anywhere and work through that and deal with my relationship with my 7-year-old little girl. And all that to say is, halfway through the book is when I was like, dude, you go around the country telling people that they're worth being well. When are you going to believe that? And it was like, today. I'm going to stop trying to hate myself into better shape or hate myself into better mental health. I'm going to stop hating myself into more friendships. I'm worth going to the gym, man. I'm worth not eating that because I'm not going to feel good. And dude, that has been the game changer of the century for me.
Just to repeat that to yourself? Was this
just
something
starting from a place of I'm worth being loved?
And then did you put practices into place? Like, how did this become, is that a truth for you? Do you today believe wholeheartedly that you are worth being loved?
Yeah. The thing for me is I've always been an obnoxiously disciplined guy. And so I nodded my head through Jocko's book, right? I was like, well, of course. Yeah. So the discipline part was there. It was never enough, because when you don't like yourself, you just keep moving the finish line on yourself. It's like running a race and you get to the end and it just keeps going. And so if you're running to try to prove to yourself that you have value, you get to the finish line and it sucks because you went with you. It's when you say, no, I'm going to be a good steward of my body. And part of that is going for a run. And part of that's working my ass off so that I can get a great time and be whatever you're going to do. But then I cross that finish line and I can pump my fist and I didn't have to prove something to myself. I already have proven I'm already worth value. I already have value. Now I'm going to go do something crazy. And dude, it changes the whole game.
Where did that narrative come from for you?
I mean, it's a mixture of some pretty gnarly childhood experiences. I think it's a mixture of having a SWAT hostage negotiator for a dad who loved me more than life itself, but was raised by a World War II vet who fought Nazis, who was raised by a guy who died when he was 9. And so I think that's just stuff goes downhill, and know that my dad loved me, was super proud of me. And those words are hard to say out loud. And so now my poor 13-year-old son, I grab his face every single day of his life and I stare into his eyes and I say, I need you to hear me. I love you and I trust you. Please don't make 13-year-old decisions today, but you're 13. I know you're going to, right? So it's just changing it over time. But I don't have any idea if I pinpointed. I just know that I had over time, the ticker tape running underneath the story of my life was, you suck and you're a piece of crap. you're a piece of crap. And it was addressing that narrative that has changed everything.
Hell yeah. I had a narrative too, is that you're not enough. I mean, like, it came from a series of many things in childhood of like, you're not fast enough. You're not working hard enough. You're not doing enough. You're not enough. You're not enough. You're not enough, supported by no emotional awareness because of my mom's patterning from her. Like, it's just like the book is there. You just open the book to your parents and you go, oh, that's the story of my life.
Right, right.
Okay,
I also think parents get a bad rap. And I think on the whole, most parents are doing the best they could with the tools they got.
100%.
And I'm super grateful for that.
That's the thing that when you said that, it goes from generation. Look, your parents did better than your parents. You're doing better than your parents, essentially, for like being able to become more aware. And like, if your dad was, if your dad's dad barely said I love you to him, or like patted him on the back, now your dad at least like patted you on the back and said I love you, son, and now you're grabbing your son's face and saying I love you, you're the best, and I'm here for you. And like, every generation does do better. And I think that's what you realize when you see the way that it's happened to you, is you go, oh my gosh, and you get that insight to going, and they did better than they've really improved. And then you all of a sudden go from pissed off to proud.
That's right. Or you have a parent who struggles with addiction deeply, and you go from, I can't believe you did that, and I hate you, and you should have been there for me. Fair. All those things are right and fair. And then you go to, my God, what happened in your life? That was your body's way of getting through the day. And then you learn that story, and the whole narrative expands. And then you go to a place of forgiveness, and I'm not going to carry that cinder block anymore. And is there a way I can create relationship in this world? Like, so I think there's something important about learning your story. And I think you got to go through the whole mix of being pissed off and angry and frustrated. And I can't believe that. And then you get to the other side of it, which is grace, which is, I can't believe y'all came that far. It's pretty impressive. And man, and I got to make sure I don't overcorrect, like parents who's like, my kid's my best friend. Don't do that to your children. You're going to destroy your kids doing that. And so I have to let my kid know he's loved, and let him know that there is not a thing he can do, that he's not welcome back in my house. And I'm going to hold you accountable, man. And I expect you to grow up, and I expect you to do hard stuff, and on and on and on, right? It's both and.
All right, well, then let's wrap up with the final one, which is the perfect one, which is choose belief.
I want to hear what you have to think first.
Oh, good. I love it. By the way, you could psychoanalyze me this whole time. It's the funnest thing to me. I want to know about myself. I interpret it different than a religious faith or a practice like that. For me, belief is more about, like, when you choose belief, you have such conviction about something. You're willing to go all the way. Like, I embody this entire reality for myself, and I know it to be true, and I believe in this. Like, I will go to the ends of the earth for this. Like, this is a truth for me. So for me, that's what I think of when I see belief. But in reading, I know that it's more than that for what you're trying to articulate.
Yeah. So what I was articulating with it is this simple practice of this. And again, I go back to the evolutionary psychology route. Like, for all of human history, people walked outside of their tents and they looked up to the sky and said, "Dear God, please rain," or gods, or whatever, cosmos, whatever. And then over the last couple hundred years, so it's wired into us to submit. It's wired into us to take a knee, that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. And overnight, we solved for food mostly across the world. We solved for water mostly across the world. We've solved for major things that have plagued humanity for all human history, right? Up until a couple hundred years ago, if you got a cut on your leg, it might kill you. Well, it won't anymore, right? And in that process of solving for those challenges, we've gotten very, very arrogant about our role as the center of the universe. And so what I'm getting at is, many of the not ancient, but the psychological theories end on this idea of self-actualization, right? That when you get this and you get this and you get this and you get this, then you reach this pinnacle where you are the beacon on the hill. the world of your creating begins to revolve around you. And what I'm suggesting is psychologically, our bodies cannot hold up the universe. We were never designed to be the center of all things. And when your body recognizes that the whole world is resting on your shoulders, it will sound every alarm it has because it cannot hold. The self can't hold. And I think it was best articulated in that it's now become just a famous speech by David Foster Wallace. This is water. But he says, man, we're beings created to worship. And he's an atheist. That wasn't a religious statement. But if you are a being created to worship and you worship beauty, you're never going to be beautiful enough. And you will always see the little crinkles around your eyes and around your mouth. And you're always going to be trying to find the next thing because that's your God. And if you worship money, you will never have enough. And if you worship shiny things and collect things, or you worship trophies, there will always be another trophy to go get. And so it's this idea of backing out of that rat race and taking a knee and submitting. Like in AA, they call it higher power. I'm a Christian guy, so I worship God. But if you're a Muslim, I don't care what your faith practice is, what your tradition is. I don't even care if you want to call it higher power. I've got friends who are just incredible moms and dads and partners, and they're atheist as the day is long, and they believe deeply in the birth and life and death and resurrection cycle, right? I become part of the soil, which becomes part of the whatever. You got to believe in something bigger than yourself and ultimately live into something of service to something bigger than yourself, or you will crash under the weight of the universe you've constructed for yourself. And so there's something powerful about taking a knee and saying, dear God, please reign so my kids can live. There's a different way that you open your hands up and experience the world versus I'm going to control every freaking variable of everything all the time. That's anxiety.
Is it when you do that, when you take a knee and you ask for that, is it then that you truly take the load off because you really believe that someone else is helping you then? Is that what lightens the load?
A great question. I could probably spend some time digging into that. I think the load is simply like, I'm not carrying this anymore, and trusting that whatever you have leaned into has that. Yeah. Whether you personify it or whether it's an energy or whatever, like, I think there's like, oh, this was never mine to carry in the first place. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the only thing I can control are my thoughts and my actions, and that's it. And that's a different level of weight to carry.
I like that. I pray. I mean, I would call myself a spiritual person, and I think my angels are badass and they all the time. Like, I'll share this with anybody. Most badass angels I've got, they're called runner guides. My friend Nada told me about this. She's like, when you're traveling, just call in your runner guides. You wouldn't believe the things that I have been able to make happen with those runner guides.
But that very active prayer is the act of taking a knee.
And I'm curious a little bit, as just one more follow-up question, is about, you're not the center of the universe. So I just would challenge or be curious about how a way to look at it differently. The way I see it is, I am like that. I do feel like that. I feel like, look, my reality is going to be interpreted by the way that I have formed my own little universe inside of me. Like the way that the way that I see things, I believe at a fundamental level, perception is reality. And that's only coming from me. So in that way, my universe changes, like my world changes, what I see, everything I see and experience changes when I change inside. So in that way, I feel like call it my inner child, higher self, soul is the center of my universe.
Is that universe that we may be talking semantics here. So we're saying the same thing, just in a different way. The perception of is the reality that you're perceiving. Oh, we can get super nerdy here. Is the reality that you're perceiving, is there a tethered reality that exists outside of you? So I'm a constructivist researcher. That was my research weight. So I believe that often reality doesn't matter. If I say, dude, there's no harm here, and your body is saying, scream, run, right? Or your body is calling back. You have PTSD and your body is trying to get your attention. I can yell all day long till I'm blue in the face about how there's no threat here. What I really need to do is come to you, right? But that doesn't change the reality that there's no threat here. And so the more somebody with PTSD stays inside that reality that their body is constructed for them, which is it's all coming down, we're not safe, we're reliving this, we're reliving this, we're reliving this, the more they crumble under that weight, the more they begin to come in touch with the true reality that exists outside of themselves, which is there's no threat here. You weren't safe then, but you're safe now.
Right. But nothing changes.
That's unloading that thing.
See nothing changes until they change. Nothing
Correct.
Changes until like if that were me
inside of you,
yeah, I have to change inside. Like I'm the universe, man. Like in here, it's all in here. Nothing is going to change until this changes. I can't talk my way into thinking that if I hear a bomb, it's not going to remind me of being at, serving and at war or something. It might, like, you can't say like, oh, it's not it. Like every time it goes off, it's going to trigger me. Like I have to change the operating system within myself so that that doesn't happen anymore.
How do you handle somebody who says, no, I won that race. And they're like, you got 33rd. You're like, no. I won. I did my best. I won. And they're like, I know, but
I would be like, I want some of what you got.
But I
actually, yeah. I mean, of course, there's it kind of leads to another very interesting topic, which is the nature of objective reality. And if we are our own, have our own world that we see based on how we are, it really challenges the idea of objective.
Except there's a 1st through 33rd place. That's very objective.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going so fast. You're going 42 miles an hour. I'm going so fast. I know. In your body, it feels like you're going fast. You're only going 42 miles an hour because I got a clock on you, right? So that becomes that objective.
So then do I have to take that person 242 miles an hour? So they go, oh, yeah, that wasn't 242 miles an hour.
I think you can. Yes, I have no business going 242, but you could teach me. I couldn't talk myself into. I know what it feels like to go 242. You may, no, you don't. Let's get in there. And your heart comes out the back of your spine. And you're like, oh, that's reality. That's what that feels like. That's what I'm saying. So I do think there's a reality out there. I think where we get into some challenges is when we use words like scary, descriptive words. That's scary. That guy's mean. She's too tall. She's too big. He's not strong enough. That's where you get into constructive reality sometimes. But in terms of like, no, you got 33rd. Like that to me feels as concrete as the ground we're driving, right? And I want there to be some objective truths, man. I don't want you to be like, nah, dude, I made that ground, that racetrack, I made it solid. All right, well, like, what's solid to you? You know what I mean? Like real solid.
Yeah, like, it's true. We do need that. We do need some objective realities to participate in this agreed upon reality that we live in.
Give me, what is your best universe book? I'm interested in reading about that.
Holographic Universe.
Oh my gosh, just the title alone, I'm super in.
Yeah, holographic universe. Shit that you couldn't imagine. Like you're like, how does that happen?
All right, I'm in on that.
I really believe that the nature of reality is so much more odd than we can imagine. I
100% believe that. Yes. Okay, cool.
In
holographic universe.
Why do you think that?
Because I think that to get nerdy, I think the nature of reality is in the in-between. I think we've got really obsessed with looking at each individual atom, and I think the action is between atoms, between molecules, between systems. I don't think that the objective piece is what is nearly as important as, I don't think the individual people sitting in that row are nearly as important as what's happened, what they're all doing together. And that changes the nature of what I'm looking at.
Well, it kind of plays into some of your work in the book and what you're talking about with a lot of things, which is the non-verbal communication. Are you like a little bit of the, like literally sitting between two people, like the energy between
you
two
can feel that. Yeah. You know, when somebody is deeply plugged into you, or when you're safe, or when your body's like, hey, it's time to go. We got to go. Yeah, you know that.
I've been saying this for a while, and I'm curious your take on it, but I feel like we're in this really like interesting point in time where we're being asked to really really tune into our bodies. We're getting so far out of our body that the only option is to go so far back into our body, because we don't know when someone's telling the truth anymore. We don't know if something that we see on the internet is a deep fake now, right? We don't really know, right? And we don't know if a documentary we saw was produced and paid for by the exact people that they want you to buy their stuff. Like, you know, we don't know. And so it's only with this or inner compass, with this tune into the body, that we can actually start to be able to be a human lie detector now, and get into the in-between and feel into the frequency and the energy that is all around us, and that there's no such thing as empty space.
If you're a leader and you can't say the words "I'm sorry" or "I changed my mind," which I think are the 4 of the most important words in the English language. Like, why would you read a book if you already know how that book ends? Why would you read a book about science if you already agree with what the outcome's going to be? What a stupid waste of your time. You already think, why would you do that? Read a book that you might disagree with, or you might learn something, and then you can say the magic words, "I changed my mind." And so if you're a leader and you can't say "I changed my mind," if you're a leader and you can't say, "Hey, dude, I used to think this and I got more data and now I learned this," then you have lost all credibility with me. If you can't say, "Dude, I made some major mistakes and I thought this was the right path and we got down it and we realized that was the wrong path. We're going to go this way now." I want nothing to do with you. And on the other side, if somebody made a deep fake and it was Jocko and he was saying, "You know what? I think all this discipline is just kind of bullcrap." Well, I've done events with Jocko. I have walked with Jocko. I've listened to his stuff. I've read his books. I would know that doesn't ring true. Right? Or if it was like, "Dude, click here for deep fake secret videos of Jocko," I don't choose to have that in my head. I'm not going to entertain that as a click. Right? I don't need that in my head. And so to me, that's just going back to, that's the intentionality. That's the mindfulness. That's, what am I feeding myself? You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I just want to unplug from the system as much as try to navigate.
So what is the future?
It's a mirage. It's a sylph.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much of that out there. You're right. So then what does the newly constructed world look like? If
I think it falls in on itself. I mean, the most compelling argument I've seen so far, there's 2 compelling arguments. One is that, like with AI and stuff, it's going to be a really impressive tool, and it's much ado about nothing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to transform our lives in pretty cool ways. And the same as the guys riding the horses, we're like, if you have these cars, we're all going to lose our jobs. And and like one guy who his whole family for generations created the pooper scooper that scooped up poo out of the street, that suddenly went away when the Model T hit the streets, you know what I mean? And more jobs than who could have imagined have created out of the automotive industry, right? So it could be that. Or I think Neil deGrasse Tyson's idea that, like, dude, these deep fakes will spin on themselves in such a quick and profound way that it just shuts the whole thing down. It just becomes noise, just static all the time. And then I'm going to have to do something insane. I'm going to have to ask my friend, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think?" Instead of just Googling it. Or my neighbor who's a farmer. "Hey, you've been growing food for," I got to tune in. Yeah, I got to know my neighbors. There's a great researcher talking about apocalypse, like when it all goes down, when the grid goes down. And I think she said the greatest hedge on, quote unquote, what comes next is how closely connected are your relationships with your neighbors. Ta-da. Not like, how much food prep do you have? How much stored coffee do you have? Do you know your neighbors? You have a small group of people that you can get through the next 6 to 9 months or 12 months with, that you trust. You go get the food. We'll help you. All right. And that becomes the circling it up. And I think that's tuning in.
The human experiment that happens every year for 1 week. That's like that.
What's that?
Burning Man. You know what happened at Burning Man this year?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I was there.
Did they make it? They all rally together?
We all totally rallied. Like if people needed food or they needed, something, like you all had to help each other, right?
Had to
Like
figure it out. That's right.
You had to figure it out. And it's like this cool social experiment that happens for 1 week every year. And they've been just doing it for decades now. And
But when that
working.
social experiment like had a calamity this year, did you leave that with a more optimistic outlook on people working together?
That's awesome. Totally. Oh,
dude,
totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We were trying to get our Winnebago out, and there's guys that are like covered in mud and with boards coming over to like put it under the tire to try and help you go pushing while getting like totally kicked with mud. And it's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're trying to get out of here too. It's like, oh. And they're like, oh, if you guys get, if we're, like at one point it was like got stuck, couldn't move. They're like, all right, well, we're just over here. We're going to make some tacos tonight. If you want to come over and you need some food, like the social experiment works. It works. It's just, and it's like, what it's actually very interesting about Burning Man is that it's like, there's essentially like, there's a feeling of like this crazy freedom of no rules, no nothing. Everybody does whatever they want. But the total like irony of it is it's actually the 10 rules that make it all work. It's the 10 rules followed very closely that actually create the freedom. Isn't that funny?
Well, it's boundaries, right? It's like having it sounds so pedantic. It's like having a budget allows you to know how much money you have so you can spend and buy whatever you want within those rules. It's knowing I'm in a connected, loving relationship. I'm anchored into bedrock so I can tether off this thing and be a maniac because I'm loved. It's that same, and we think that freedom is no rules. That's insane. It's insanity. It's boundaries, right?
Right. And they are very strict rules. It's about inclusiveness. It's about helping. It's about cleaning up after yourself. Like there's 10 very big just rules.
Human 101, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. I don't want to open up a can of worms out of curiosity, given the fact that, Sal DiStefano so well. And I just brought up Burning Man, and you want to help people feel better and process their traumas. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but the emerging role of different kinds of drugs or plant medicines or medicines that they play on people, processing. Like one of my very good friends, he owned the company GoDaddy, and he served in the Marines. And it wasn't until he did, and I'm not speaking out of turn, these are things he's happy to talk about, and they've been in magazines. Like it wasn't until he did those therapies that he says, I came home.
The literature is super clear. My friends with like my close personal friends who have done that, they just say it was, I came alive. I met God. I drank for 14 years and then I haven't drank since years ago. I was a operator in whatever military unit, and I've seen and done some insane things, and now I can hold my baby. Like, so I think anybody who just dismisses that off the table is not looking at the clinical data, right? The trials. And I do appreciate that community is trying to play by the rules so they can help people. And I say playing by the rules, like I'm filing clinical trials. I'm doing these randomized control stuff so that we can get it published in the science text so that we can follow your rules. But just the conversation after conversation after conversation I have with people who've been down that road, I think it would be madness to throw it out the window.
Well, in body feedback, my whole body got goosebumps, and that's like the full body yes of like how much truth there is in that, and that you believe that too.
You have to. It's madness. It would be madness to just be like, no, none of that's real. No, I've talked to that dude. It's real. In fact, not only have I talked to that dude, I was with that person before, and now I'm with that person after. And I'm thinking of one former operator in particular. I was with that person, and when they left, I told the team I was with, I don't want to be around that person. And now I consider that person a very close friend. And so, yeah, it's a very different experience.
The landscape of healing is changing so much.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. And I go back to the Andy Huberman quote, like, better living through science still requires better living, right? And so I do think there's something very powerful about sitting with somebody administering this medicine that you trust. That's you submitting, it's you taking a knee to somebody and saying, I believe in you. Please walk with me. And there's the actual experience itself. And then there's the community on the back end. And then there's well, I quit drinking and 6 months later, I feel fantastic. And so I think it's all of it, right?
Yeah. I was just like thinking about the 6 and I'm like, there's a lot of those 6 within the experience. You choose reality, you see things, you see the way you're in the experience, and they're so real that they're real and they become embodied then, which becomes a new reality. And connection, you want to know yourself, so you do it. Freedom, you're doing it so that you can know more. You're doing it so you can see things as they are. Mindfulness you sort of have an observer awareness of your experience. Health and healing is you're doing it for that. And belief, there's so much of all of
every person I've ever met has said that they walked away. They may not walk away a Christian or walk away under some fundamental religious belief, but like, oh, no. There's a bigger thing. There's something bigger at play. There's something way bigger at play, and it's good. And I'm going to be all right on the back end at 100% of the people I've talked to. So yeah, I'm optimistic I'm optimistic for any sort of healing tool that helps anybody, right? Brings peace and relief. I'm still super into the human experience, into connectivity. And if there's some barrier that prevents connectivity, then man.
It's through the integration afterwards that, you have the experience, but you were talking about your inner world and your outer reality not matching. And that is exactly how I describe plant medicine or those experiences, those modalities, is that you go into the experience and right now your inner and outer, yourself and your reality kind of match, like your world and you kind of match. You kind of have your friends and your job and your things. And then you go into the experience. It's life-changing because you've now, in my spiritual terms I'd say like skip timelines. You've skipped a lot of timelines, or you've just changed so much. You have new embodied beliefs and truths that now your outer reality really doesn't match where you're at anymore. And it takes time. And it's in that time and that integration of getting to that new reality that or whatever way you want to look at it.
Right.
whichever direction. But it's in that process that is what you're talking about, which is in the connection, which is in the people, which is in the communication, which is in the sober
in exercise, and exercise and in movement and caring with your friends and eating well. I mean, it's all that stuff all wound together. It's beautiful.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on the book. And it's awesome.
Thank you for your hospitality, dude. You're awesome.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense